connecting your world.
All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're popping the hood on the internet to see how our data actually travels across the web. Now, you're probably already familiar with IP addresses and the basic idea of data packets, but right now we are zeroing in on layer 4 of the OSI model, the transport layer. This is where the magic really happens. It's the layer that takes that chaotic fire hose of digital information hitting your router and makes sure it's sorted, managed, and delivered flawlessly. Think about this for a second. How does your device manage so much simultaneous data without getting it completely mixed up? I mean, imagine you're streaming music, downloading a massive file, jumping on a voice call, and browsing the web, all at the exact same time on the exact same device. Every single bit of that incoming data is arriving at the same IP address. So how does your computer know not to play a piece of HTML code through your speakers or, feed your voice call audio into your web browser? Well, here's our roadmap to finding out. We're going to cover the transport layer, multiplexing and ports, TCP, the three-way handshake, UDP, and finally congestion control. Let's get right to it. First up, Section 1, meeting the transport layer. A great way to think about this is with a mail analogy. You can think of the network layer, layer 3, which handles IP addresses, like a mail truck finding your apartment building. It gets the package to the correct street address for sure, but its job basically stops at the front door. Layer 4, on the other hand, is the receptionist sitting in the lobby. When a data packet arrives, the transport layer looks at it and says, okay, this goes to application A and this one goes to application B. It totally bridges the gap between the network routing the packets and the actual software applications that need to use them. Moving to Section 2, multiplexing and ports. Let's see how our digital receptionist actually pulls this off. So, multiplexing. This is honestly the clever little trick that lets your computer run a dozen apps at once without instantly scrambling the incoming packets. The transport layer pulls this off by tagging every single data segment with a source port and a destination port. It's essentially dividing a single network connection into multiple logical channels. When your operating system gets a packet, it just reads that destination port and instantly knows exactly which running process requested that data. And that brings us to a crucial concept, the socket. A socket is simply a combination of the IP address and the port number, creating a completely unique end-to-end connection identifier. For example, if your IP address is 10.1.1.1 and your web browser happens to be using port 5300, your local socket is 10.1.1.1:5300. It's like combining a street address with an apartment number. All internet communication happens between a pair of these sockets, one on your client side and one on the server side. Now, what's really fascinating here is how servers use well-known, standardized port numbers to listen for specific requests. While your local web browser just grabs a random dynamic port to send out a request, a web server is predictably waiting on port 80 for regular HTTP traffic or port 443 for secure HTTPS. This standardized system is the whole reason your computer can seamlessly connect to servers all over the globe without having to constantly ask where to send the data. Section 3, TCP, the reliable courier. Time to meet the first of our two main protocol couriers. When data is packaged up by TCP, it gets slapped with a surprisingly heavy header. We're talking between 20 and 60 bytes long, which in the networking world is pretty massive. But it's large because it carries an absolute ton of tracking information. We are talking source and destination ports, sequence numbers, acknowledgement numbers, window sizes, checksums, the whole shebang. It sounds like a lot of overhead, but every single bit of it is there for a very specific reason.
Because TCP, it is an absolute perfectionist. It's a courier who demands receipts for literally everything. It's a connection-oriented protocol, which means it establishes a rock-solid relationship with the receiver before it sends even a single byte of application data. It provides fully reliable delivery. By using those sequence numbers we just mentioned, TCP ensures that if packets arrive out of order, and trust me, they do that a lot on the internet, they are reassembled perfectly. And if a packet gets lost in transit, TCP notices the missing acknowledgement receipt and automatically retransmits the data. Absolutely nothing gets left behind.
Which brings us to Section 4, the three-way handshake. TCP doesn't just start throwing data at a server. No way. It insists on a mandatory conversational ritual first, the famous three-way handshake. First, the client sends a SYN packet basically saying, hey, I want to sync up and start a connection. The server receives this and replies with a SYN-ACK, which translates to, I received your request, I acknowledge it, and I'm ready to sync as well. Finally, the client sends a final ACK confirming, awesome, we are connected. Only after this highly polite three-step dance does the actual data finally begin to flow. All right, moving to Section 5, UDP, speed over reliability. Sometimes you just don't have time for polite introductions, right? If TCP is the perfectionist, UDP is the total rebel. It is a chaotic speed demon. It strips its header down to a remarkably lean 8 bytes. It totally skips the three-way handshake. It doesn't use sequence numbers, and it definitely doesn't ask for acknowledgments. It just gathers the data and throws it at the destination IP address as fast as it possibly can. If a packet gets dropped, corrupted, or arrives out of order, UDP simply does not care. It leaves all the error handling entirely up to the application layer. So you're probably thinking, why on earth would we ever use an unreliable courier? Well, think about real-time apps. Multiplayer gaming, live video streaming, a Zoom call. For these, speed is absolutely everything. If you're on a video call and you lose a frame of video, you do not want the network to pause the entire call while it waits for a retransmission of a fraction of a second of video that's already in the past. A dropped frame is way, way better than a delayed one. So for these applications, perfect accuracy is happily sacrificed for pure speed and low latency. Finally, Section 6, traffic and congestion control. Let's see how the network keeps from collapsing under its own weight. First up is flow control. This is an end-to-end mechanism managed by TCP. Imagine a lightning-fast server trying to blast data to an older, slower smartphone. If the server sends data at its absolute maximum speed, the phone's memory buffer will instantly overflow and it'll just drop the data. To prevent this, TCP uses a sliding window. Basically, in every single acknowledgement packet, the receiver advertises exactly how much free buffer space it currently has. The sender constantly reads this and adjusts its transmission pace to match, perfectly balancing the flow so the receiver is never overwhelmed. It's a brilliant system. Now, congestion control is slightly different. It looks at the health of the entire network path, essentially acting like a digital traffic cop. When routers on the internet get overloaded, they just start dropping packets. TCP interprets a lost packet as a giant red flag for network congestion. Using algorithms with names like slow start and congestion avoidance, a TCP sender will actually dynamically shrink its transmission window when it detects those losses. It voluntarily slows down its sending rate to relieve pressure on the network and only slowly ramps back up when the network proves it can handle the traffic again. So the big takeaway here is just how deeply these Layer 4 protocols influence the stability and speed of our daily internet experience. Without TCP's elegant flow and congestion control, the internet would regularly grind to a complete halt in localized gridlocks. And without UDP's lightweight speed, the modern real-time web of video calls and live streaming literally wouldn't be possible. They are two highly specialized tools, perfectly tailored for two very different jobs. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. As our networks evolve and our applications increasingly demand both the absolute reliability of TCP and the lightning-fast latency of UDP, where do we go next? Will we just keep stretching these legacy protocols to their absolute limits, or is it finally time for a totally new courier to take the stage? Thanks for learning with us today, and keep exploring.